Marcus Rodriguez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he carried another tray of glasses through the busy kitchen. The Grandview Country Club was packed tonight. It was their biggest event of the year. Rich people from all over the city came to this charity dinner. They wore expensive clothes and talked about things Marcus could never afford. He had been working here for 3 years now. Every day was the same. He served food and drinks to people who never looked at him. They talked over him like he was not there. Sometimes they talked about their kids going to college. Other times they complained about their vacation homes needing repairs. Marcus just smiled and did his job. Tonight was different, though. The ballroom looked amazing. Big crystal lights hung from the ceiling. White flowers sat on every table. The walls were covered with gold decorations. Everything sparkled and shined. Marcus had helped set up all morning. His back hurt from moving tables and chairs. The guests started arriving at 6 o'clock. Expensive cars pulled up to the front door. Men in black suits got out. Women wore long dresses that cost more than Marcus made in 6 months. Their jewelry caught the light as they walked into the building. Marcus watched from the kitchen window as they greeted each other with fake smiles and air kisses. Mrs. Hamilton was the first person Marcus served tonight. She was the wife of a bank owner. Her dress was bright red and covered in tiny diamonds. She did not say thank you when Marcus brought her wine. She just took it and kept talking to her friends about her trip to Paris. Marcus had never been on a plane. He had never left his home state. The night went on like this. Marcus walked between tables carrying heavy trays. His feet hurt in his cheap black shoes. The uniform made him feel invisible. All the servers wore the same thing. Black pants, white shirt, black vest, and a bow tie. They all looked the same to the rich guests. Marcus thought about his real dreams as he worked. Before he started this job, he had studied music at the community college. He loved playing piano more than anything else in the world. Music made him feel alive. When he played, he forgot about all his problems. He forgot about being poor. He forgot about working long hours for little money, but dreams did not pay the bills. His mother got sick 2 years ago. The hospital bills kept coming. Marcus had to drop out of school to work full-time. The country club job paid better than other places. He sent most of his money home to help his family. There was never anything left for himself. As Marcus served dinner, he noticed the big piano in the corner of the room. It was beautiful. The wood was dark and polished. The keys were white as snow. He had seen it many times before, but tonight it seemed to call to him. His fingers itched to touch those keys. He remembered the feeling of music flowing through his hands. The piano was a Steinway Grand. Marcus knew about pianos from his music classes. This one probably cost more than most people made in 5 years. It sat there like a sleeping giant, waiting for someone to wake it up with music. Marcus tried not to look at the piano too much. He had work to do. The guests were getting ready for the main event. Tonight they would auction off expensive things to raise money for charity. Or, at least that is what they said. Marcus wondered how much of the money really helped poor people. He served coffee and dessert as the evening went on. The rich people talked louder now. They had been drinking wine all night. Their voices filled the room with chatter about money and business deals. Marcus heard them talking about buying boats and summer houses. One man complained that his son wanted a new car. The car cost more than Marcus made in 2 years. The auction was supposed to start at 9 o'clock. A famous pianist was coming to play music during the event. Marcus had heard the other workers talking about it. The pianist charged thousands of dollars just to play for one night. Marcus could live for months on that much money. As 9 o'clock came closer, Marcus noticed people looking worried. The event manager kept checking her phone. She walked around the room with a nervous look on her face. Something was wrong. Marcus could tell by the way she moved her hands when she talked. He was clearing plates from a table when he heard her on the phone. Her voice was getting louder and more upset. The pianist was stuck at the airport. His flight was delayed. Bad weather had closed the runways. He would not make it to the dinner. Marcus felt sorry for the event manager. Her name was Sarah, and she was always nice to the workers. She treated them like real people, not like furniture. Now she looked like she might cry. This was her biggest event of the year. If something went wrong, she would get in trouble with her boss. The guests were starting to notice the delay. They looked at their expensive watches and whispered to each other. These people did not like to wait. They were used to getting what they wanted right away. Marcus could see them getting impatient. Sarah made more phone calls. She called every musician in the city, but it was too late notice. Everyone was already working somewhere else or could not come so fast. The auction needed to start soon. The guests were getting restless. Marcus finished cleaning his last table and walked toward the kitchen. But he stopped and looked at the piano again. His heart started beating faster. He knew he could play it. He had learned so many songs in college. His fingers remembered every note even though he had not played in months, but he was just a server. These rich people would never listen to someone like him. They probably thought he could not even read music. To them, he was nobody special. Just another poor person serving their food. Still, the piano seemed to be calling to him. The music in his heart wanted to come out. For 3 years he had buried his dreams. He had pretended that music did not matter anymore. But seeing that beautiful piano made all his feelings come back. Marcus took a deep breath and walked toward the kitchen. He had work to finish. But as he walked, he could not stop thinking about the piano. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe. Tonight his dreams would have a chance to come alive again. Sarah walked around the ballroom with her phone pressed to her ear. Marcus could see the worry on her face getting worse with each call. She had tried calling 15 different musicians. None of them could come to the country club tonight. It was too late and too far for most of them. The guests were starting to ask questions. Mrs. Hamilton walked up to Sarah with an angry look. She wanted to know why the auction had not started yet. Other people began gathering around them. Their voices got louder as they complained about the delay. Marcus watched from the side of the room. He felt bad for Sarah. She was a good person who worked hard. She did not deserve this trouble. But he also felt something else growing inside him. A feeling he had not felt in a long time. Hope. He knew he could help. He had spent 4 years learning piano at the community college. His teacher said he had real talent. She told him he could play professionally if he kept studying. But that dream died when his mother got sick and the bills started piling up. Marcus cleaned glasses, while he watched Sarah make more calls. Each time someone said no, her shoulders dropped a little more. The guests were getting angrier. Some of them started talking about leaving early. This would ruin everything Sarah had worked for. The auction was supposed to raise money for the local children's hospital. Marcus thought about all the sick kids who needed help. His little sister had been in that hospital once. The doctors and nurses there saved her life. If this event failed, less money would go to help other children. 20 minutes passed. Sarah had called everyone she could think of. No one was available. She walked over to her boss, Mr. Peterson. He was the club manager and a very serious man. Marcus had never seen him smile in 3 years of working there. Mr. Peterson did not look happy when Sarah told him the news. His face turned red as she explained about the pianist. Marcus could not hear exactly what he said, but he could tell it was not good. Sarah nodded and looked like she wanted to disappear. The guests were getting restless now. Some of them walked toward the exit. Others stood in groups complaining loudly about the poor organization. Marcus knew that if too many people left, the charity would not raise enough money. That is when Marcus made a decision that would change his life. He put down his tray and walked toward Sarah. His heart was beating so fast he thought everyone could hear it. His hands were shaking as he got closer to her. Sarah was standing alone near the piano. She looked defeated. Her perfect event was falling apart, and there was nothing she could do about it. Marcus took a deep breath and tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and looked surprised to see him. Marcus was just a server to her. Why would he be bothering her during this crisis? She was polite but clearly did not have time to talk. Marcus swallowed hard and found his voice. He told her that he could play piano. He explained that he had studied music in college. He knew many songs that would be perfect for the auction. His voice was quiet and nervous, but his words were clear. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. She looked confused, like she could not understand what he was saying, a server who could play piano. It seemed impossible to her. She had worked with Marcus for 2 years, but never knew anything about his background. She asked him if he was serious. Marcus nodded and told her about his music education. He explained that he had played in student concerts and local events. He could play classical music, jazz, or anything else they needed. His hands were steady and his technique was good, but Sarah looked doubtful. She glanced around the room at all the wealthy guests. These people expected the best of everything. They had paid thousands of dollars for their tickets tonight. How could she let a server perform for them? What if he was not good enough? What if he embarrassed the club? Marcus saw the doubt in her eyes. He understood why she was hesitant. He was wearing a server's uniform. He looked like any other worker. These rich people would never expect someone like him to have musical talent. But he also knew this might be his only chance. He asked Sarah to let him play just one song. If she did not like it, he would stop and go back to work. No one would ever know he tried. But if he was good enough, he could save the event and help the charity. Sarah looked around the room again. More guests were heading toward the door. Mr. Peterson was watching her with angry eyes. She was running out of time and options. The auction needed to start soon or the whole night would be ruined. She asked Marcus what songs he could play. He told her about all the classical pieces he knew: Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven, and many others. He also knew popular songs and jazz standards. Whatever the crowd wanted to hear, he could probably play it. Sarah bit her lip as she thought about it. This was the biggest risk of her career. If Marcus failed, she would probably lose her job. Mr. Peterson would blame her for the disaster. But if she did nothing, the event would fail anyway. The clock on the wall showed 9:30. They were already 30 minutes behind schedule. Some of the most important donors were starting to leave. Sarah knew she had to make a choice right now. She looked at Marcus again. He was young and nervous, but there was something in his eyes that made her believe him. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was hope. But something told her to trust this quiet server who claimed he could save her event. Finally, Sarah nodded. She told Marcus he could try. But she warned him that if he failed, it would be bad for both of them. The club's reputation was on the line. These guests expected perfection, and they would not forgive mistakes. Marcus felt a mix of fear and excitement rush through his body. This was his chance to do what he loved again. After 3 years of carrying trays and cleaning tables, he could finally play music. But he also knew how much pressure was on him. If he failed, he would lose his job and embarrass himself in front of all these important people. Sarah walked over to the microphone. She told the guests that there had been a change in the evening's entertainment. Instead of their planned pianist, they would have a special performance by someone very talented. She did not mention that the performer was their server. Marcus walked toward the piano on shaking legs. The guests watched him with curious eyes. They probably wondered who this young man in the server uniform was. Some of them looked annoyed that they had to wait even longer. As Marcus reached the piano bench, he felt all eyes in the room on him. 200 of the richest people in the city were waiting to see what he could do. His whole life had led to this moment. Everything depended on what happened next. Marcus stood in front of the beautiful piano. His hands were shaking as he looked at the keys. It had been 6 months since he last played music. He wondered if his fingers would remember what to do. The piano was much better than anything he had ever played before. The keys looked perfect and shiny under the bright lights. The room was full of people watching him. Most of them looked confused. They were wondering why a server was standing at the piano instead of carrying their drinks. Some guests whispered to each other and pointed at his uniform. Marcus could feel their eyes on him like hot sunshine. He sat down on the piano bench and adjusted it to the right height. The bench was soft and comfortable, much better than the hard wooden chair he used to practice on at school. He placed his hands over the keys but did not press them yet. He needed a moment to calm his nerves. Marcus closed his eyes and took 3 deep breaths. He thought about his old music teacher, Mrs. Chun. She always told her students to feel the music before they played it. Music was not just about pressing the right keys. It was about sharing feelings and telling stories without words. When he opened his eyes, Marcus felt calmer. He knew what song he wanted to play. It was Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. This was one of the most beautiful pieces ever written. It was also very difficult to play. But Marcus had practiced it hundreds of times in college. His fingers knew every note by heart. The first notes came out soft and gentle. Marcus pressed the keys carefully, making sure each sound was clear and perfect. The melody was sad and sweet at the same time. It reminded him of rain falling on a quiet lake. The music filled the big room and seemed to float in the air. At first, the guests kept talking. They were still focused on their conversations about business and money. The piano music was just background noise to them. Some people continued complaining about the delay. Others checked their expensive watches and looked impatient, but as Marcus played more, something began to change. The melody got stronger and more beautiful. His fingers moved across the keys like dancers. Each note was perfectly placed and timed. The music started to weave its way into people's hearts. Even though they were not paying attention yet, Mrs. Hamilton was talking to her friend about a new diamond necklace when she stopped mid-sentence. Something about the music made her turn toward the piano. She had heard many professional pianists at fancy concerts, but there was something special about this performance. The young man in the server uniform played with real feeling. Marcus felt his confidence growing with each note. His hands were no longer shaking. The music flowed out of him like water from a spring. He remembered why he loved playing piano so much. When he played, he felt complete. All his worries and problems disappeared. There was only the music and the joy it brought him. The piece had many different parts. Sometimes it was soft and gentle, like a whisper. Other times it was strong and powerful like thunder. Marcus played each section with perfect control. His left hand created a steady rhythm while his right hand sang the beautiful melody. The two hands worked together like old friends. More people began to notice the music. A businessman named Mr. Williams stopped talking about his golf game. He turned to look at the piano with surprise on his face. The music was much better than he expected. Who was this young man who could play so beautifully? Marcus reached the part of the song where the melody became very sad and emotional. This section always made him think about his dreams and the life he wanted to have. His fingers pressed the keys with deep feeling. The music told the story of someone who had hopes and dreams but faced many difficulties. The room was getting quieter. Now, more conversations were stopping as people listened to the music. They could hear that this was not ordinary playing. The server at the piano had real talent. His technique was perfect and his interpretation was moving. Even people who did not like classical music found themselves drawn to the beautiful sounds. A woman named Mrs. Rodriguez wiped a tear from her eye. The music reminded her of her grandmother, who used to play piano when she was a child. She had not thought about those memories in years. But this young man's playing brought them all back. The music had the power to touch people's hearts and bring back their deepest feelings. Marcus played the middle section of the piece, where the melody became more complex and challenging. His fingers flew across the keys with amazing speed and accuracy. This part required years of practice to play correctly. Many professional pianists struggled with these difficult passages. But Marcus played them perfectly, like he had been born to make this music. The guests were amazed by what they were hearing. This was not what they expected from a charity dinner. They thought they would hear some background music while they bid on auction items. Instead, they were witnessing a truly gifted musician sharing his talent with them. Sarah watched from the side of the room with her mouth open. She could not believe what was happening. The quiet server who brought people their drinks was playing. Like a master musician, she felt proud that she had decided to trust him. Her event was being saved by someone no one had ever noticed before. The music built toward a powerful climax. Marcus played with passion and energy that filled every corner of the large room. His whole body moved with the rhythm of the music. He was no longer just a server in a uniform. He had become a true artist, sharing his gift with the world. By now, almost everyone in the room had stopped talking. They stood or sat in amazement, watching the young man create beautiful music with such skill and feeling. Some people had never heard classical music played so well in person. Others were reminded of famous concerts they had attended in great concert halls around the world. Marcus felt the power of the music flowing through him. This was why he had studied music in the first place. This was his true calling and purpose in life. For 3 years, he had hidden this part of himself while he worked to pay bills and help his family. But tonight, his real self was finally free to shine. The piece was approaching its emotional peak. Marcus prepared himself for the most challenging and beautiful part of the song. Everything he had learned and practiced was leading to this moment. The entire room held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The music reached its most powerful moment. Marcus's fingers moved like lightning across the keys. Every note was perfect and filled with deep emotion. The sound filled the entire ballroom and seemed to make the air itself vibrate with beauty. This was the part of the song that separated good pianists from great ones. And Marcus was playing it like a master. The room had become completely silent. Every single person stopped what they were doing to listen. Waiters stood frozen with trays in their hands. Guests who had been checking their phones put them away. Even the kitchen staff came out to hear the incredible music. 200 people held their breath as they witnessed something truly special. Mrs. Hamilton felt tears running down her cheeks. She had attended concerts at the best venues in New York and London. She had heard world-famous pianists perform in grand concert halls. But she had never been so moved by music before. This young server was not just playing notes. He was sharing his soul with everyone in the room. Marcus felt completely free as he played. All the pain and struggle of the past 3 years poured out through his fingertips. The music told the story of his dreams, his hopes, and his determination to never give up. Every difficult day of serving drinks to people who ignored him. Every night he went to bed tired and discouraged. All of it was being transformed into something beautiful. The melody soared to incredible heights. Marcus's right hand played notes so high and pure they seemed to float in the air like angels singing. His left hand provided a strong foundation that anchored the entire piece. The two hands worked together in perfect harmony, creating layers of sound that touched everyone's heart. Mr. Peterson, the club manager, stood with his mouth open. He had hired Marcus 3 years ago as just another server. The young man had always been quiet and hardworking. Peterson never imagined that someone with such extraordinary talent was carrying trays in his restaurant. He felt ashamed that he had never really seen Marcus as a person before tonight. The music told a story that everyone could understand, even without words. It spoke of struggle and hope, of dreams that seemed impossible but refused to die, of talent that could not be hidden forever, no matter how hard life tried to bury it. Every person in the room saw something of themselves in that story. A businessman named Mr. Chun remembered when he was young and poor. He had worked many difficult jobs to pay for school. He had almost given up on his dreams many times. But he kept fighting and eventually built a successful company. Now he realized that the same spirit lived in this young musician. The same refusal to surrender that had made his own success possible. Marcus played with such passion that his whole body moved with the music. His face showed every emotion the song contained. Joy, sadness, hope, and determination all flowed across his features as he played. He was no longer performing for the rich guests. He was playing for himself, for his dreams, and for everyone who had ever been told they were not good enough. The most difficult section of the piece required Marcus to play incredibly fast passages with both hands. His fingers flew across the keys so quickly they were almost a blur, but every note was clear and precise. Years of practice had trained his muscles to remember these movements perfectly. Even though he had not played in months, his hands knew exactly what to do. Women in expensive dresses wiped tears from their eyes, careful not to smudge their makeup. Men in $1,000 suits found themselves deeply moved by the music. These were people who thought they had everything money could buy, but they realized they had never experienced anything as beautiful as what this young server was giving them for free, the piece built to its dramatic climax. Marcus played with such power that the piano seemed to shake. The music filled every corner of the huge room and echoed off the walls. It was like listening to an entire orchestra, but it was just one person and one instrument creating all this incredible sound. Sarah watched in amazement as her guests became completely captivated by the performance. People who had been ready to leave early were now leaning forward in their chairs, not wanting to miss a single note. The auction she had been worried about was forgotten. Everyone was focused on the magic happening at the piano. Marcus felt the music carrying him to a place beyond the ballroom. In his mind, he was performing at Carnegie Hall or the Lincoln Center. The audience was not just rich people at a charity dinner. They were music lovers who truly appreciated what he was sharing with them. This was the life he had always dreamed of living. The emotional peak of the piece required Marcus to play with incredible sensitivity and control. These were the most beautiful and challenging measures in the entire composition. His fingers touched the keys so gently that the notes seemed to float in the air like flower petals. Everyone in the room felt their hearts being lifted by the pure beauty of the sound. An elderly woman named Mrs. Foster closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. She remembered her late husband, who had loved classical music. They used to attend concerts together when they were young and in love. This performance brought back all those precious memories. She felt grateful to this young man for giving her such a beautiful gift. As the piece approached its conclusion, Marcus played with everything he had. All his training, all his natural talent, and all his love for music came together in these final moments. The room was so quiet that the only sound was the piano singing its beautiful song. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped, so nothing would interfere with the magic. The music began to soften as the piece moved toward its gentle ending. Marcus played the final phrases with tender care, like he was tucking a child into bed. Each note was precious and perfect. The melody seemed to float away slowly, leaving everyone with a sense of peace and wonder. As the last note faded into silence, the ballroom remained completely still. Nobody moved or spoke. They were all trying to hold on to the beautiful feeling the music had created. For a few perfect moments, everyone in that room had been transported to a better world where only beauty and truth existed. Then something happened that had never occurred in the history of the Grandview Country Club. The silence lasted for what felt like forever. Marcus sat at the piano with his hands still resting on the keys. He was breathing hard from the emotional effort of playing such a powerful piece. He looked out at the crowd of wealthy guests, wondering what they were thinking. Had he done well? Did they like his performance? Or were they angry that a server had dared to perform for them? Then Mrs. Hamilton started clapping. Her applause echoed through the quiet room like thunder. Within seconds, everyone else joined in. The sound was amazing. 200 people clapping as hard as they could. The noise filled the ballroom and seemed to shake the walls. It was the loudest applause the country club had ever heard. But the clapping was not enough. One by one, people began to stand up. First Mrs. Hamilton, then Mr. Chun, then Mrs. Foster. Soon every single person in the room was on their feet. They were giving Marcus a standing ovation that went on and on. Some people were still crying, others were shouting, "Bravo!" at the top of their voices. Marcus could not believe what was happening. He had never received applause like this before. In college, people clapped politely after his performances. But this was different. These people were not just being polite. They were truly moved by what they had heard. Their applause came from their hearts, not from good manners. The standing ovation lasted for 5 full minutes. Marcus stood up from the piano bench and bowed to the crowd. He felt embarrassed but also proud. For the first time in 3 years, he felt like people really saw him. Not as a server or a poor young man, but as a musician with real talent, When the applause finally stopped, people did not return to their seats. Instead, they began walking toward the piano. Marcus watched in surprise as some of the richest and most important people in the city came to talk to him. These were the same people who had ignored him when he served their food. Now they wanted to shake his hand and tell him how amazing his performance was. Mrs. Hamilton was the first to reach him. She had tears in her eyes as she told Marcus that his playing was the most beautiful thing she had heard in years. She asked where he had learned to play so well. When Marcus told her about his music studies, she looked shocked. She could not believe that someone with such talent was working as a server. Then something incredible. Shappened. Mrs. Hamilton told Marcus that she wanted to help him continue his musical education. She was on the board of directors at the state university. They had an excellent music program with some of the best teachers in the country. She would make sure Marcus got a full scholarship to study there. Marcus felt dizzy. A full scholarship meant he could go back to school without paying anything. He could study music full-time instead of working at the country club. His dreams of becoming a professional musician could finally come true. He tried to thank Mrs. Hamilton, but she waved away his thanks. She said it was her pleasure to help someone with such obvious talent, but Mrs. Hamilton was not the only one who wanted to help. Mr. Chun walked up and introduced himself as the owner of a large technology company. He told Marcus that his daughter took piano lessons and needed a good teacher. He offered to pay Marcus to give her private lessons. The amount he offered was more than Marcus made in a month at the country club. More people came forward with offers. Mrs. Foster wanted Marcus to play at her granddaughter's wedding. A man named Mr. Davis asked if Marcus would perform at his company's annual party. Another woman wanted to hire him to give piano lessons to her 3 children. Everyone wanted to help the talented young man who had moved them so deeply. Sarah watched all this happening with a big smile on her face. Her event had been saved in the most amazing way possible. The guests were so impressed with Marcus's performance that they forgot all about the delayed auction. They were having a much better time than they would have had with the original hired pianist. Mr. Peterson, the club manager, walked over to Marcus with a strange look on his face. Marcus worried that he might be in trouble for leaving his serving duties. But Mr. Peterson surprised him by apologizing. He said he was sorry for never recognizing Marcus's talent. He offered Marcus a new job as the club's house pianist for special events. The pay would be much better than his server wages. The most important moment came when Mrs. Catherine Whitmore approached Marcus. She was the most respected arts patron in the city. She had helped many young musicians start their careers. Mrs. Whitmore told Marcus that she had connections at several prestigious music schools. She would help him apply to the best programs in the country. Mrs. Whitmore also told Marcus about a music competition she sponsored every year. The winner received money to study music and help starting a professional career. She encouraged Marcus to enter the competition. With his talent, she was sure he would do very well. As the evening continued, Marcus found himself surrounded by people who wanted to help him succeed. They gave him business cards and phone numbers. They told him to call them to discuss opportunities. Some people wrote checks on the spot to help pay for his music education. By the end of the night, Marcus had received over $50,000 in donations for his education. He also had job offers, scholarship opportunities, and connections to important people in the music world. His life had completely changed in just one evening. The auction finally happened, but it was different than planned. Instead of bidding on expensive items, people wanted to donate money to help Marcus pursue his musical dreams. They created a special fund just for him. The charity also raised more money than ever before because people were feeling so generous after hearing such beautiful music. When Marcus finally got home that night, he sat in his small apartment and tried to understand what had happened. That morning, he had been just another poor server working to pay bills. Now he had the chance to achieve everything he had ever dreamed of. He called his mother to tell her the good news. She cried with joy when she heard about all the opportunities that had come his way. She told him how proud she was and how much his father would have loved to see this moment. Marcus promised her that he would work hard and make the most of these chances. The next morning, Marcus went to the country club to give his notice. He would finish out the week, but then he would leave to start his new life as a musician. Sarah was sad to see him go, but happy for his success. She said she always knew there was something special about him. As Marcus cleaned tables one last time, he looked at the piano where everything had changed. He smiled and whispered a quiet thank you to the beautiful instrument that had helped him find his voice. Soon he would be playing on stages around the world, sharing his gift with people everywhere. The shy server who had been invisible for 3 years was gone forever. In his place stood a confident young musician ready to take on the world. Marcus Rodriguez had finally found his way home to the music that lived in his heart.